This is not simply betrayal, this is predatory maternal psychopathy wrapped in pearls and charity galas. Jane Whitmore was conditioned for helplessness, beaten into compliance, then sold into a murder scenario engineered to look profitable and clean. Her mother didn't want a daughter, she wanted an asset with a death value. But then Jane lands in front of Marco DeLuca, a man expected to complete the violence, and he sees the pathology instantly. What follows is not rescue, it is psychological war.
So check this out. Jane Whitmore gets traded like a poker chip by her own mother to a Chicago mob kingpin. She's on a 24-hour countdown to being permanently deleted. But then the boss, Marco DeLuca, sees her bruised face, and the entire plan gets a hard reboot. Mom's genius move is about to blow up in her face, because this is where the cold-blooded gangster script gets completely flipped. Chicago's a rainy blur, a perfect match for Jane's shattered mental state. She's cuffed in some dark car, but the real prison is in her head. This whole nightmare started 3 days ago thanks to dear old Mom. Now, stuck between two slabs of muscle, she's not a daughter, she's a down payment, and her mother's parting shot still rings in her ears. You're finally being of some use, Jane. Of some use. Those words cut deeper than any knife. The car stops at some generic-looking warehouse, the secret nerve center for the whole operation. In this city, Marco DeLuca isn't just a boss. He's the final boss, a ruthless ghost. And Jane? She's the human sacrifice being delivered straight to his door. They shove her out into the storm, and though she stumbles, she makes damn sure she doesn't fall. Hitting the ground now would mean it's game over, and she's done playing that game. The inside of the building is a total trip. Fancy polished floors and mood lighting, like a 5-star execution chamber. They march her down a ridiculously long hall, and yeah, she's terrified, but that's just another Tuesday for her. The walk ends at a massive door that opens into a crazy civilized office with a fireplace blazing against the storm. And there he is, sitting behind a monster desk. Marco DeLuca. He's younger than the legend, maybe mid-30s, with a sharp jawline and eyes like dead embers. As they push her in, he just watches. "Leave us," he says, his voice quiet but full of pure command. His goons hesitate, so he repeats, "I said, leave." The lock clicks shut. Jane just stands there, dripping on his rug, waiting for the end her own mother paid for. And here's the big twist. The whole thing is over a $2 million life insurance policy. For Mom to collect, Jane has to stop breathing, with a mob hit making for a perfect, untraceable story. Marco just keeps staring, his gray eyes scanning her face, not like a predator, but like he's actually seeing her. After a lifetime of being invisible, it's a total head trip. "Sit," he finally commands. Her body is frozen stiff. He rises, moving like a shadow. Up close, the guy is 10 times more intimidating. As he approaches, Jane flinches, a pure reflex from years of taking hits. She braces for it, but the punch never comes. Marco stops, hands in his pockets, and takes stock of her injuries. The split lip, the marks on her throat. "Who did this?" His voice is still low, but now it's got an edge like broken glass. Jane's mouth is dry. "I asked a question," he states. "My mother," she whispers. Those 2 words hang in the room, weighing a ton. Marco's face is a stone mask, but his jaw clenches tight. He reaches out super slow, like he's approaching a spooked animal. His touch on her chin is so gentle it makes her jump. He tilts her face into the light, inspecting the damage with a professional, detached eye. When he lets her go, she almost crumples. "Sit," he says again. This time she obeys. She drops into a leather chair, shaking uncontrollably. Marco walks back to his desk, pours her a glass of something amber, and sets it in front of her. "Drink this." When she hesitates, he cuts her off. That was an order. With trembling hands, she chugs the whiskey. The burn is a shock that clears her head. He waits her out. "Why are you here?" Jane asks, her voice a wreck. "You tell me," he fires back. "I was told your mom was sending a payment for her debt. What I was not told," he goes on, "was that she was using her own daughter as payment." A busted, ugly laugh escapes Jane's lips. "Payment? Is that what she's calling it?" Marco's eyes narrow. "What would you call it?" "A hit," she blurts out. "There's a $2 million life insurance policy on me. She needs me to be unalived so she can cash it." The room goes ice cold. "Say that again," he commands, his voice dangerously low. So she lays out the whole twisted plot for him. She explains how the beatings got worse to build a story for the cops, how she was isolated and turned into a ghost nobody would miss. When she finishes, Marco is rock still, his eyes burning with cold fury. "She brought you to me so I would kill you," he states, not asking. "Yes, and you still came." Jane's laugh is just a hollow, dead sound. Where else could I go? She made sure I had no one and nothing. For the first time, she meets his gaze head on. "So, yes, I came. At least this is an ending." Marco jumps out of his chair so fast that Jane flinches again. He sees it, of course. He walks to the window. "Do you have any idea who I am?" She lists his stats like a robot. "Head of the DeLuca family. You run half of Chicago. You make people vanish." "Correct," he says, turning around. "I am all of those things, but I do not kill women. And I absolutely do not kill women who are delivered to me looking like they went 10 rounds with a truck." Jane just stares, her brain short-circuiting. This was not in the script. "Then what are you going to do with me?" A sharp, predatory smile hits Marco's lips with zero warmth behind it. "I am going to make your mother regret she was ever born, but first, I have one question for you." She just nods, her throat closing up. "Do you want to live, Jane?" The question slams into her. No one in 26 years had ever asked her that. She can't get the word out. "I honestly don't know." He leans against his desk. "Okay, here's the deal. You stay here tonight. You get food, a bed, a doctor. Tomorrow I'll ask you again. If the answer is yes, we make a plan. Together." "Why?" The word rips out of her. "I'm a nobody." "You're a woman who walked into the lion's den with no other options. That takes gut," he says, and for a split second, he almost looks human. "And your mother made a big mistake thinking she could use me as her personal assassin. Getting used is a personal insult, so call this me settling a grudge." Jane's hands are shaking again, but it's not from fear. It's a terrifying new feeling. Hope. He hits a button, and a sharp woman in black enters. "Elena," Marco says, "take Jane to the guest suite. Get Dr. Ramos." Elena gives Jane a quick, calculating look. "At once." Jane gets to her feet, looking at the man who was supposed to be her executioner. "I can't figure you out," she breathes. A ghost of a smile touches Marco's lips. "Maybe, maybe not. But you have to survive first to even try." Elena then leads her through hallways straight out of a mob movie, with art on the walls that's worth more than a house. The elevator opens to a suite that makes her old place look like a closet. Huge windows, a massive bed, and a bathroom for a small army. Everything is perfect. "Necessities are in the closet," Elena says, her voice efficient but not unkind. "Clothes, toiletries, for anything else, use the phone by the bed and dial one. Someone will pick up." Jane just gave a shocked nod. At the door, Elena paused. My private doctor gets here in 20 minutes. Don't worry, she won't ask anything you don't want to answer. All Jane could manage was a whispered, "Thank you." For a second, Elena's vibe softened, showing a flash of motherly warmth. You're totally safe here. Everything you thought you knew, everything they drilled into your head, is a lie. Marco DeLuca's a complicated guy, but he doesn't go after innocent people. Then the door clicked, and Jane was completely alone, standing in the middle of the room with rainwater puddling on the shiny floor. Jane's composure finally shattered. She barely made it to the bathroom before the sobs ripped out of her, raw, animal-like screams locked away for a lifetime. She hit the cold tiles, hugging her knees, and just cried until she was empty. The silence that followed felt different. Not empty, but calm. As she peeled off her wet dress, her own reflection in the mirror stopped her cold. The bruises were way worse than she realized. A nasty galaxy of purple and yellow all over her body, her arms, her neck. A busted lip, a puffy eye. She looked like a map of a war zone. This is what she did. This is the hell she put you through. A bath felt easier than a shower. Standing up was too much work. The water was almost scalding, a clean kind of pain, but she sank into it, letting the heat soak into her bones. She stayed put until the water was ice cold. Her skin was all wrinkled, and some tiny spark of life came back. The doctor showed up right on time, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense vibe. Her exam was professional, asking for permission before doing anything, quietly noting all the damage. 2 broken ribs, major bruising, a bit dehydrated, injuries that would heal. You're a lot stronger than you look, Dr. Ramos noted. Most people would have broken long before this. Jane didn't feel strong, just like glass held together by pure spite, but she gave the doctor a nod anyway. After the doc left, Elena was back with soup and bread. Jane forced it down because she had to, not because it tasted like anything. Then Elena took the tray and dimmed the lights. You need to rest, she said. Tomorrow's gonna be a big day. Jane got into sheets that were as soft as she'd imagined. This whole feeling of being a fraud, a ghost living in someone else's life, should have wrecked her. But instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in forever. Safety. She was out like a light, the rain drumming in the window like a beat, the city just a blur of lights. And for the first night in who knows how long, she didn't dream about drowning. Dawn broke with a soft light and the smell of coffee. Jane shot up in bed, heart hammering before she remembered where she was. Not in her mom's prison, not in some sketchy motel. She was here, in Marco DeLuca's tower, his personal fortress. She sat up, the sharp pain in her side grounding her in reality. A knock on the door made her flinch. It is Elena, a voice said. Come in. Elena entered with a tray holding coffee, fruit, and pastries, setting it down. Mr. DeLuca wants to talk once you've had something to eat, whenever you're ready. What time is it? A little after 9 o'clock. She'd been asleep for nearly 12 hours. She ate while Elena watched her, knowing that saying no wasn't really an option. The coffee was strong, the fruit was fresh, the pastry was amazing. Her body soaked up the fuel like a desert soaks up water. When she was done, Elena opened the closet. It was stocked with clothes her size, jeans, sweaters, simple dresses. How did you? Mr. DeLuca is very thorough. Elena handed her some jeans and a gray sweater. Get dressed, I'll be right outside. Jane changed fast, sneaking one last look in the mirror. The bruises were still there, but they didn't look as bad in the morning light. She pulled her hair back, washed her face, and tried to look like she had it all together. It was a total fail, but at least she tried. Elena led her back down, through a different set of hallways, to a sun-drenched room totally different from last night's office. This place was cozy, personal. Bookshelves on one wall, a big couch facing a private terrace. At a small table, Marco DeLuca was reading a newspaper with a coffee. He looked up when she walked in. "Sit." Just like that, Elena was gone. Jane sat down. Marco crisply folded his newspaper and put it down. His face was the same, still sizing her up. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." Straightforward and correct. He poured another coffee and slid it over to her. "Dr. Ramos confirms you'll make a full recovery. The ribs will take a few weeks." Jane cupped her hands around the warm mug. "Why are you doing all of this?" "I told you last night." "No. The real reason. What's your price?" Her voice was sharper now, with a new kind of bite. "Nobody does this much for nothing." Marco leaned back and crossed his arms. She braced for him to get pissed, but a small smirk played on his lips. "You're a lot smarter than you act." "I had to be. Being naive in my mother's world gets you killed." "Fair point." He raised his cup. "Here's the truth, Jane. Your mother tried to screw me over. She set up a scheme to frame me for your murder, so she'd get rich while I took the fall." "I don't like that." "So yeah, there's a price. I need your help to make sure she pays. But I won't force you. You can walk out that door right now if you want. I'll give you cash, a new name, a chance to vanish, no strings attached." Jane's throat got tight. "And if I stay, then we make her regret every single thing she has ever done." His voice dropped, turning ice cold. "Together." The word hung in the air like a promise. Jane put her mug down. Her hands were shaking again, but this time from rage, a blistering fury she'd been bottling up her entire life. "How would we do it?" Marco's smile was all predator, zero warmth. "First, we let everyone know you're alive. We make it clear you're under my protection. That move alone is a declaration of war. Second, we dig up proof of everything she's done, every scam, every lie. And third," he paused, his eyes flashing, "we tear down her reputation in front of the high society clowns she loves. We're going to strip her of everything." "Her name," Jane whispered. "Exactly. She'll come after me. That's what she does." "Let her try." The words were like silk wrapped around a blade. This time, she'll be up against someone who knows how to play the game and win. Jane looked at the man across from her, a mobster, a killer, someone who should terrify her, but being near him, she felt a dangerous spark of her own power. "Why do I trust him? Because he's been straight with me, and because I know he's my only way out of this." He leaned in, his arms on the table. "So I'll ask you again, Jane. Do you want to live?" The answer shot out of her. "Yes." "Good." Marco stood up, holding his hand out. "Then let's get started." Jane took his hand. His grip was solid, a warm, steady anchor. And for the first time in 26 years, she felt like she was touching an ally, not an enemy, maybe even a friend. The rain had stopped. Outside the window, Chicago was bright in the sun, clear and full of possibilities. Jane had mastered being invisible, being quiet, a ghost in her own story. But in that moment, her hand in Marco DeLuca's, something inside her cracked wide open. She was done being a background character, and her mother had absolutely no idea about the hurricane that was coming for her. The training kicked off that afternoon when Marco led her to a smaller private room with a glass wall that looked out on a peaceful garden. A table in the middle of the room was completely buried under files, photos, and legal papers. Jane saw her mother's handwriting on a few things, and her stomach dropped. Marco's voice was low as he motioned for her to sit. She took a seat, staring at the organized mess. "What is all this?" "The architectural blueprint of your mother's life. Every dirty deal, every lie, every time she chose money over people." He sat across from her, pushed a folder over, and opened it. Inside was the evidence, bank statements, pictures of signed checks, wire transfer slips. The woman was stealing from the charity she ran, 10,000 here, 20,000 there, small enough to fly under the radar, but big enough to pay for a secret life. Jane's hands balled into fists. The story about a broke charity was a total fabrication, a lie cooked up for total control. Marco slid another file over. Her mother was juggling 3 separate accounts using shell companies, had money parked in the Caymans, and even owned a Miami condo bought with dirty cash. He tapped a page. "Your mom is sitting on nearly $8 million, all pocketed while she made you feel worthless." Jane's entire world started to crack. She gripped the table, the sting of betrayal flaring up inside her. 8 million. Earned while she was stuck with 3 rotating outfits, treating ramen like a 5-star meal, and constantly being told she was just a weight on everyone's shoulders. Why? The question was barely a sound. What for? To keep you on a leash. Marco's voice was pure ice, the sound of a man who'd seen this kind of evil before. Money buys options. Options give you power. She made damn sure you had neither. Jane just stared at him, her eyes blurring with tears she refused to let fall. "And the insurance policy," Marco then revealed another, much thinner folder. It contained a copy of the contract. $2 million, with Jane as the person insured and her mom as the one who'd cash in. The whole thing was set up just 4 months ago. "She activated this right after your 26th birthday," Marco laid it out. "The moment you were no longer her legal dependent. Old enough that if you suddenly died, it wouldn't raise too many red flags. This was all her plan. It wasn't a question, but a sickening realization. The pieces slammed together with horrifying clarity. The non-stop abuse, her mother cutting her off from everyone. It all built a story where her death would be a tragedy, but not a surprise." "How long have you known?" "Since last night. I started digging after you passed out." Marco closed the file. "Your mother reached out to a business associate of mine 2 weeks back, talking about a big payday and asking if I'd take a different kind of payment. I told her to bring it in person. I had to see exactly what she was putting on the table. And I was the collateral?" "You got it, but she seriously miscalculated." Marco's face became a mask of stone. "She figured I was the kind of guy who skips the background check, that I'd just see you as a bargaining chip. She was dead wrong." Jane looked at the papers spread out in front of her, the undeniable evidence of her mother's scheme. A part of her wanted to look away, to just unknow all of it. But another part, the one that took Marco's hand that morning, wanted to burn every last word into her brain. "What's our next move?" she asked. "Right now, we sit on this. We don't show our cards," Marco replied, gathering the files into one thick, damning pile. "First things first, we get you ready. Your mother is going to start looking for you. And when she shows up, you need to be able to look her in the eye without falling apart." "I won't fall apart." The words were a promise, sharp and full of acid. Marco watched her, tilting his head just a bit. You might think that now, but she's had 26 years to build a prison in your head. You don't just stroll out of a place like that. Then show me how, Jane shot back, her gaze locking onto his. You promised we'd do this together, so teach me. Something shifted in Marco's expression. Not quite respect, but it was close. Fine. Rule number 1, stop saying sorry for taking up space. I don't do that. You do. You flinched when Elena came in. You shied away when I pulled out your chair. You act grateful for basic decency. His tone was firm, but there was no cruelty in it. You've been trained to make yourself small. I need you to get big. Jane swallowed hard against a lump forming in her throat. I don't know how. We'll start with the basics. Marco stood up, signaling for her to join him. Walk across this room, no slouching, chin up, move like you own the whole damn building. The command was simple. Actually doing it wasn't. Jane got to her feet, her body already curling into a protective hunch as she took one shaky step, then another. Halfway there, she caught herself staring at the floor and forced her head up. The posture felt wrong, exposed, like she was asking for a hit. Again, Marco ordered. She walked back, trying to keep her spine straight, and couldn't. Again, he was relentless. For a solid 20 minutes, Marco made her walk that room until her lungs were on fire and her legs were shaking. Every time she slouched, he corrected her. Every time her eyes fell, his voice cut through her focus. The whole thing was brutal, embarrassing, and somehow it was liberating. Finally, he held up a hand. Better, not perfect, but better. Jane collapsed into a chair, breathing hard. Does this ever get any easier? Eventually. Right now, you're rewriting a lifetime of mental conditioning. That's gonna take some time. Marco poured her a glass of water from a pitcher. But you're already showing more guts than most people would. Most people weren't raised by my mother. Fair point. He handed her the glass. And that's exactly why you're going to survive what's coming. Jane drank, the cold water soothing her raw throat. And what's coming? You're going to learn how to fight back, not just with your fists, though we'll get to that, but with your words and your very presence, with the power to stare someone down and show them you're not scared. Marco leaned on the table, folding his arms. Fear is your mother's favorite tool. We're going to take it away from her. How? By making you untouchable. The word hung in the air like a suit of invisible armor. Untouchable. It sounded impossible, but not any more impossible than plotting against her mom from inside a Mafia boss's fortress. When will she find out I made it? Jane asked. Soon. I'm having a message sent out this afternoon. Marco's smile was as thin and sharp as a blade. Nothing obvious. Just a little hint that her latest business deal didn't quite go as planned. Jane's heart started to pound. She'll come here. Probably, and when she does, you'll be ready. He pushed off the table. Let's go. There's someone I want you to meet. They left the office and walked through more hallways. Jane was trying to map out the compound in her head before they got into an elevator and went down 2 floors. When the doors opened, they were in what looked like a private gym, loaded with weights, punching bags, and training mats. Right in the middle of it all, a woman in workout gear was throwing a series of absolutely vicious kicks. She stopped when she saw them, breathing hard, her dark hair pulled back in a tight braid. She looked to be in her 30s. was built like a brick house and had the kind of light scars that told a story. Jane, this is Risa, Marco introduced them. She's going to teach you how to not get killed. Risa's eyes scanned Jane from top to bottom, a completely professional look over. You ever been in a real fight before? Not one I won. Good. Means you don't have any bad habits I need to beat out of you. Risa grabbed a towel, wiping sweat from her forehead. We start with the basics. Your stance, your footwork, and how to punch without breaking your own hand. Got it? Jane could only nod, her throat suddenly dry. Great. Go change. There's gear for you in the locker room, Risa pointed to a door on the other side of the gym. And leave the fear behind. It's useless to you now. Marco put a hand on Jane's shoulder for a second, a solid grounding touch. You got this. Jane wasn't so sure he was right, but she went to the locker room anyway, changing into the training clothes that were waiting for her and fit perfectly. She walked back out feeling like a total fraud. Risa was waiting, her focus absolute. All right, Risa said, show me a fighting stance. Jane had no clue what that meant. She just stood there, shifting her weight to one foot, arms dangling at her sides. Risa started circling her like a shark. You need a solid base, feet shoulder width apart, knees bent, hands up to protect your face. Risa demonstrated the pose, and Jane copied her. Better. Now, when someone grabs you, what's your first move? Run! Wrong. I mean, not completely. Running's the goal, but when you can't. Risa shot forward with shocking speed, her hand locking onto Jane's wrist. Jane's gut instinct was to yank away, which made her trip over her own feet. See? You pull back. That's the textbook response. Instead, you move in, you close distance, and you take away their power. She walked Jane through the counter move in slow motion. Jane tried to do it, her brain fighting against 26 years of training to shrink away from any threat. It felt completely backward, like she was walking right into a trap, with every nerve screaming at her to do the opposite. Again, Risa ordered. They drilled it over and over. Simple moves, basic blocks, ways to break an attacker's grip. Every hit felt like a cracked rib, but Jane just ate the pain. Reza was a relentless training bot, tweaking her stance and pushing Jane to the edge without breaking her. After an hour, Jane was a trembling, sweat-soaked mess. We're done, Risa clipped. Better than I expected. Jane gasped. Feels like that truck hit me all over again. Risa almost smiled. That means it's working. Shower, eat. Tomorrow we go again. Jane dragged herself to the lockers, peeled off her drenched clothes, and let the hot water kill the pain. Elena was waiting with fresh clothes, the silent support Jane was starting to rely on. Elena delivered the summons from Mr. DeLuca. Dinner! 7 p.m. main dining room. The simple order scrambled Jane's brain. Dinner? Elena's advice was simple. Don't overthink it. Adding with a dark little smile, his bite is rarely fatal. But the dining room wasn't some mobster cliché. It was all class. A huge table for 12 was set for only 2. Marco was on his phone but looked up to say, Risa says you don't quit. That's good. As Jane sat, she muttered, She probably also said I'm a mess. He corrected her. No, she said you're a blank slate. There's a difference, Marco said, pouring wine. You can shape a blank slate. A train wreck is a total loss. Elena appeared from a hidden door with their food. It wasn't a power play, just simple pasta and salad. Eat, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. You earned it. The first bite made Jane realize she was starving, and an involuntary sound of pure relief escaped her. Marco let out a real laugh. Good, huh? She could only say, I can't remember the last time I ate real food. His reply was a stone-cold promise. Get used to it. Rosa, my cook for 10 years, gets personally offended if you leave anything. They ate in a heavy silence that Jane expected him to break with an interrogation. But he just ate, refilling her glass, letting the quiet stretch. Finally, she couldn't take it. Why are you being nice to me? Marco paused. You think this is nice? When she nodded, he broke it down for her. This is business. You're useless to me, Broken. He then got to the real point. But if you're asking why you're not just some disposable piece on my board, it's because I don't need you to be. Your goal is my goal. We want the same damn thing. Why complicate it? Jane pointed out that wasn't how guys in his world operated. I'm not most guys, he shot back, his eyes like ice. He explained his code. I don't get off on hurting people who haven't earned it. Your mother had her karma coming, you didn't. That hit her hard. I have no idea how to do any of this, she admitted. You're doing it, he replied. She confessed her fear, but he just saw it as a weapon. Good. Fear keeps you sharp, but you can't let it run you. You have more fight in you than you think. Her voice was thin. Everyone says that, but I don't feel it. I feel like I'm one wrong step from completely falling apart. His answer was brutally practical. Then fall apart. But do it in here, behind my walls, where she can't see you. That raw honesty hit harder than any sympathy could. She didn't see a savior, just another survivor. A quiet question surfaced. Did someone teach you all this? Marco's face went blank. After a beat, he answered, My father. His lessons weren't nice, but they were effective. When she asked if his father was like him, his response was a one-word horror story. Worse, he ruled with fear. I learned fast that fear is a crappy foundation. It only works till someone gets brave. So that's the plan? We make my mother afraid? Jane asked. Nope, Marco corrected with a razor-thin smile. The plan is to make her irrelevant. Fear is her power source. We're going to unplug it. The idea wasn't just revenge, it was erasure. The perfect payback for a mother who tried to make her invisible. After dinner, Marco walked her to the elevator, his expression unreadable again. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow gets harder. When she asked how, he was deliberately vague. You'll see. The elevator doors closed, hiding his mysterious smirk. Alone in her room, she crashed onto the bed. Her old cracked phone was sitting on the nightstand, a ghost she'd been too scared to face. But now she had to. Her hand shook as she turned it on. The screen lit up with a history of being hunted. 17 missed calls and 12 texts from her mother. The messages were a masterclass in manipulation, shifting from angry demands to guilt trips. The last one, sent this morning, was a straight-up threat. I know where you are. This won't end well for you. A knot of ice formed in her stomach as she read it over and over. The truth hit her like a ton of bricks. Her mother knew. A sharp knock startled her. It was Marco, looking grim and holding a tablet. Your mother just made her play. He showed her the screen. It was a social media profile with 50,000 followers. The latest post was a picture of a young, smiling Jane with a caption about a heartbroken mother looking for her mentally unwell daughter, who had been missing for 3 days. It was a brilliant, sick move, weaponizing public sympathy with hashtags like "Help Find Jane" and "Missing Person." The comments were a flood of sympathy from strangers, all sharing the fake tragedy. Jane's hands balled into fists. She's playing the victim. Of course she is. It's her signature move, Marco said, putting the tablet down. He predicted her mother's whole script, painting Jane as unstable and her own return as some heroic rescue. So what do we do? Jane asked. We let her build the stage. Let her think she has a royal flush. A cold, wicked smile spread across his face. Then, when she has the biggest audience possible, we're gonna rip the curtain down and show everyone the monster. When do we do that? Soon. But you need to get ready, he replied, handing her a formal business card. Dr. Levin is a therapist, a specialist in situations like yours. Your appointment is 10 a.m. tomorrow. Jane's walls went up instantly. You think I need a shrink? Marco corrected her gently. I think you've been wounded. There's a difference. He framed it tactically. You can't win this war carrying all the shrapnel from the last one. Dr. Levin helps you unload it. Her pride fought him, but she knew he was right about the poison in her system. Okay, she whispered, giving in. Good, Marco said from the doorway. Jane, you're holding up better than you know. Remember that? He was gone before she could say anything. She leaned against the door as her phone buzzed one last time. It was her mother. You cannot escape me. Jane stared at the text, then, with icy calm, typed back 2 words. Watch me. She hit send before she could second-guess it and shut the phone off. Morning came too fast, with Elena arriving with a breakfast tray, a silent signal that her appointment was coming up. She went through the morning like a robot, feeling weird, just putting on jeans as she tried to ignore the therapy session looming over her. Dr. Levin's office was a 20-minute drive away in a quiet, anonymous building. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes greeted her. I'm Sarah. As Jane sat, Sarah got right to it. Marco called. He gave me the short version, but this has to come from you. In your own words, tell me why you're here. And for the first time, Jane, who had been taught that the truth was always a weapon, started to talk. She let it all out. The total control, the manufactured isolation, the way a single look could make her feel like nothing. Sarah listened with the calm focus of a pro. When Jane finally ran out of words, the therapist gave her a diagnosis. What you've been through is classic, systematic psychological abuse. Your mother built a perfect cage for you, one you were never meant to leave. Then she flipped the script. The very fact you're sitting in this chair proves you're stronger than she ever let you believe. Jane's voice was tight. But I don't feel strong. Sarah explained that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about acting even when you're terrified. She was blunt, saying the road ahead would be tough, but that the biggest step, the choice to fight back, was already behind her. That really clicked for Jane. For the next hour, they got tactical. Sarah gave Jane mental tools, ways to ground herself during a panic attack, methods to silence her mother's voice in her head, and a new plan for building a self that wasn't based on fear. All right, 2 sessions a week, Sarah laid it out. More if it gets real nasty. It's gonna be a dumpster fire before this gets better, especially when you face her. With time running out, she added, we're getting you battle ready. Together. Sarah slid over a card with her number, a hotline for the war room. Jane grabbed it like a lifeline. Thank me, Sarah told her, and when you're looking back at this chaos from the winner's circle. Back at the safe house, Jane found Marco in his office, face like a gargoyle while on a call. He pointed to a chair, and as she sat, she overheard clips from his own shadow war. The offer was dead on arrival. The answer was always going to be no. A heavy silence hung in the air. Marco doesn't cut deals with people who sell their own flesh and blood. Another beat of stillness. The ultimatum was blunt. Any more contact and he'd expose her to the world for the monster she really is. The phone slammed down. End of discussion. My mother, Jane's voice was a ghost. Her lawyer, he shot back. Seemed she wanted to negotiate a price for your return. A raw, humorless laugh escaped Marco, like she was some piece of lost cargo. Jane's hands balled into fists. What did you say? That she could find her own way to hell. Marco dug his fingers into his temples. The first shot was fired. The story online was already blowing up. There's a search out for you. She filed a missing person report with the cops. Can she make me go back? You're 26, he stated flatly. Legally, she's got nothing. But she's spinning a whole fanfic where you're unstable and I'm the kidnapper. Anything to play the part of the poor, grieving victim. Jane felt that old familiar panic squeeze her chest. So what's the play? Marco's eyes locked on hers, dead serious. We're going to dismantle her lies, piece by piece, so thoroughly she can never recover. How? He shoved a file across the desk. Inside was a ridiculously fancy invitation, gold letters on thick cardstock for the annual Chicago Children's Foundation Gala, her mother's personal stage where she played the role of the city's top saint. It's in 2 weeks, Marco said, stone-faced. Your mother will be there, so will 500 of Chicago's biggest sharks plus a swarm of reporters. Jane's heart started hammering her ribs. You want me to go? I want you to show up and let them see you perfectly fine, perfectly sane. And after that, we'll let them see her. A smirk touched Marco's lips, but it was all ice and razor blades. You said you wanted to fight. Welcome to the main event. Jane stared at the invite. 2 weeks. 14 days to rebuild herself into someone her mother couldn't shatter, someone who could face a mob and speak her truth without collapsing. The whole idea felt impossible. But then again, so did breathing a few weeks ago. All right, she let out a breath. Let's begin. Marco's hard expression softened, showing a flicker of something like respect. Then the training montage begins. The next 14 days were a blur of absolute focus. Jane's whole life fell into a new rhythm, jarring at first, but absolutely critical. Mornings were with Risa in the gym, learning to command a room instead of hiding in it. Afternoons were with Sarah, digging through the psychological wreckage of her past. Evenings belonged to Marco, giving her a crash course in the cutthroat politics of Chicago's elite. Name this man, Marco would snap, holding up a photo of a silver-haired guy in a flashy suit. Jane would answer on instinct. Richard Carmichael owns 3 downtown hotels, sits on Mom's charity board, married way too young, and has a nasty gambling problem. Excellent. And her? A second picture? This one of a woman with killer cheekbones and a look that missed nothing? Patricia Weston, real estate queen. She despises my mother behind that polite smile. They're rivals, constantly poaching each other's big money donors. Marco dropped the photos, a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. You're learning the battlefield? Feels like I'm cramming for a final I never signed up for. That's exactly what it is. And if you fail, your mother wins. He poured some coffee Elena had left, pushing a cup to Jane. These people, they're all predators. They'll cozy up to your mother as long as she's useful, but they'll turn on her the second she bleeds. Our job is just to make the first cut. Jane wrapped her hands around the warm mug. And you're sure this will work? That my story will matter more than hers? They won't have a choice, not when we show them the financial records. Marco spun his laptop around for her to see. The screen was an ocean of ledgers, emails, and files Jane had never laid eyes on. My people were thorough. For 7 years, your mother has been using this foundation like her personal ATM. Ghost payrolls, fake expenses, donations that just disappear. The proof is all here. As Jane clicked through the files, a wave of sickness hit her. How did nobody see this? Because her story was too good to question. She's magnetic, almost hypnotic. She spins a beautiful tale about saving children while looking flawless in a designer gown. Marco's voice went ice cold. But a good story only holds up until it meets a hard truth, and you're going to be the one to deliver it at the gala. We will, as a team. Marco snapped the laptop shut with finality. But the whole plan depends on you being ready, on you being able to look her in the eye and not shatter. Jane held his gaze. I won't break. You think that now, but she knows every button you have. She spent 26 years making a list of every single one of your triggers. Then I'll have to be stronger than she is smart. Jane put her cup down, her face set like granite. I'm not the same person she sold 2 weeks ago. You made sure of that. A strange look crossed Marco's face. Maybe pride, maybe fear. Just remember, this isn't about getting even. It's about getting justice. Is there a difference? Jane could taste the bitterness in her own question. From where I'm standing, they look the same. Marco leaned back in his chair, studying her. Revenge is a feeling. It's a fire that burns hot and fast and then goes out. Justice is a structure. It lasts, and it rebuilds what was broken. He paused. Your mother took everything from you. We're not just taking it back. We're making sure she can never do this to anyone else ever again. His words hit her deep. He was right. This was bigger than her own pain, bigger than what her mother did to her. Other people were being fooled, people who believed the lie, and maybe other girls out there were just like her. All right, she breathed out. For justice, then. The days blurred into one long, brutal training sequence. Jane's ribs healed enough for her to move without pain. Her time with Riza went from blocking hits to delivering them, each blow forging a core of steel where fear used to live. Sarah taught her how to hear her mother's voice in her head and how to shut it down, replacing it with her own damn worth. And Marco was a constant, silent presence. He'd show up at the gym just to watch, to offer a small correction to her form. He'd have dinner with her, just listening, as she talked about rewiring a lifetime of brainwashing. He never mentioned a debt, never hinted that she owed him anything for this. That lack of a price tag built a trust she'd never had in another soul. Just 5 days before the gala, Elena came into Jane's room holding 3 garment bags. Mr. DeLuca had these made for you, she said, hanging them in the closet, for the party. Jane unzipped the first bag and sucked in a breath. The dress was the color of a moonless night, cut with clean, severe lines. A weapon, not the frilly prison gowns her mother forced on her. This was what a woman wore, not a doll. It commanded respect without a word. It's stunning, Jane whispered. Put it on, we have to check the fit. Jane slid into the silk and the material settled on her like a second skin. It wasn't tight, but it felt solid. She looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. The last of the bruises had faded to pale yellow shadows. A stylist had cut her hair into an actual shape, not a mess of tangles. She looked like someone who mattered. He has good taste, Elena remarked, fixing a tiny seam. He always has. Jane turned, looking at this new reflection. What's his real reason for all this? Elena's face fell just a little. That's for him to tell you. But if I had to guess, I'd say you remind him of someone. Or maybe of a version of himself he was a very long time ago. Elena laid it out, her tone dead serious. Look, Mr. DeLuca isn't some guy who helps people on a whim, but when he's 100% in. You hit the jackpot. Jane was not feeling like a winner. You're breathing, aren't you? And you're about to absolutely dismantle the person who wanted you deleted. That's not the jackpot, kid. That's a comeback. After Elena left, Jane faced the mirror. The reflection staring back was an ice queen, a total 180 from that wreck she was 2 weeks ago. But under the designer clothes and perfect hair, she felt it. That cold, tight knot of terror just waiting. What if seeing her mother made her just completely freeze? What if this entire revenge fortress she'd built just crumbled the second they were in the same room? A knock at the door snapped her out of it. It was Marco. Jane let him in. He was in his usual expensive suit, but his poker face seemed a little off. Elena told me the dress was a perfect fit. It is, thank you. He waved off her thanks like it was nothing. That's not important. There's something you have to see. He led her to another floor, behind a door that needed a key card and a thumbprint to open. The room inside was straight out of a spy movie, a galaxy of screens, humming servers, and 2 tech guys who just nodded at them. This is the command center, Marco announced, where we put together the gala takedown. You need to see this beforehand, so you're prepared. A young analyst pulled a file onto the main screen. It was a highlight reel of pure damnation. The video opened with her mother's public image. At charity galas, smiling for the cameras, talking about helping the weak. Then that whole image was violently shredded. Financial records scrolled by, covered in bright red warnings. Shady transfers, hidden accounts, and messages talking about how to silence anyone who spoke up. Then came the photos. A small, bruised Jane, school pictures where the pain in her eyes was a silent scream. And then Marco's team dropped the final bomb. Sealed medical records, page after page, that documented years of covered-up abuse that had been conveniently ignored. The finishing move was the life insurance policy, filled with notes that spelled out the real plan, the money motive, the expected payout, the deadline. The screen went black. Jane's hands were trembling. You dug all of this up? Most of it was already out there. We just connected the pieces. Marco gestured to the tech. This is going to hijack every screen for 4 minutes. Long enough to end her, but short enough to keep everyone glued. Jane shot back. She'll deny all of it. Denials are useless against proof this solid. Marco's voice was like steel. The media frenzy will be instant and investigation will be unavoidable. Her powerful friends will disappear. Her entire world is about to detonate. Jane stared at the black screen, seeing it for the weapon it was. I want to add something, she said. Marco raised an eyebrow. What? A direct statement from me after the video ends. Jane looked him straight in the eye. I want to get in front of that camera and say, in my own words, exactly what she did. Jane, that's not necessary. It is for me. Her voice was pure iron. You talked about justice. Justice means the victim gets to be heard. It's my turn to talk. Marco studied her for a long, heavy second before he nodded. Okay, we shoot it tomorrow. 1 take, no screw-ups. You have to nail it perfectly. I will. That night, Jane wrote and rewrote her speech, cutting any word that sounded weak or angry, any hint of the broken kid her mother had made. The final script was raw, honest, and absolutely devastating. They filmed it the next day. It was just her, sitting, staring into the camera. No makeup to hide the fading bruises, no script in her hands. Just Jane, her eyes locked on the lens. My name is Jane Whitmore, she began, her voice unshakable. The woman you know as the philanthropist Charlotte Whitmore is the same person who abused me, controlled me, and sold my life to a stranger because she decided my death was worth more than my life. Everything you just saw tonight is a fact. Every file, every photo. This is who she really is, and my silence is officially over. When she finished, the room was dead quiet. The cameraman whispered, "Wow," and bailed out of there fast. Marco stood with his arms crossed, his face unreadable. Was that too much? Jane asked. No, it was flawless. His voice was hoarse. There is absolutely no coming back from this for her. Good, Jane said, getting up on wobbly legs, and that's the whole point. 3 days before the gala, her mother launched her counterattack. Jane was in the gym with Reese when Elena appeared looking tense. Jane, you're needed upstairs right now. The sharp edge in Elena's voice was a major red flag. Jane followed her to Marco's office, where he was by the window with a phone to his ear, his body language rigid. I don't give a damn what warrant you think you have. You will not step foot on this property without... He went quiet, listening. In that case, I'll see you at the precinct with my lawyer. He killed the call and turned to Jane. Your mother called the police. She's claiming I kidnapped you. They're here to do a wellness check. A pit of dread formed in Jane's stomach. Are they even allowed to do that? They can legally try, but it's going nowhere. You're an adult, here by choice. They have zero case. Marco's jaw was clenched. This is her move. She's trying to trap you, forcing you to pick between her and making this whole thing bigger. I'm not going back, Jane shot back, her voice full of defiance. No matter what they demand, I won't go. Good. We face this head on. You will talk to the cops, confirm you're fine, here willingly, and that she is the real danger. Marco moved closer. Can you handle this without breaking? Jane thought about the last 2 weeks, the training, the therapy, the work to build this new version of herself. I can. Perfect. She is expecting you to crumble. Let's show her just how wrong she is. Less than an hour later, 2 cops were in a conference room. Marco and his lawyer sat on one side, Jane on the other, her hands clasped to hide the fact they were shaking. The senior cop, a woman with exhausted eyes, looked at Jane. Miss Whitmore, a report was filed that you're being held here against your will. Is that true? No, Jane answered, her voice surprisingly steady. I am here by my own choice. Your mother seems to think differently. She's incredibly worried about you. A dark laugh almost escaped Jane. My mother is worried about her public image, and that's all. The younger officer leaned forward. She showed us your social media, pointing out you've been silent for weeks. That's not typical for someone who's safe. What's not typical, Jane shot back, is a mother who beats her own child, then files a fake missing person report to cover up her crimes. She pulled up her sleeves, showing the fading bruises. She gave me these, and worse things before that. I am here because Marco DeLuca gave me a safe place when my own mother tried to set up my death. The 2 cops shared a look. The woman took out a notepad. That is an incredibly serious allegation. It is also the truth, and I have proof. Medical records, witnesses, and the life insurance policy she took out on me. Jane locked eyes with the officer. Look into my past. Talk to my old doctors. You will see the pattern. They questioned her for another 20 minutes. When they finished, both of them looked seriously troubled. The older one handed Jane a business card. If you ever need help, call this number. It's for victim services. I'm already getting help, Jane said, looking at Marco. I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. After they left, the lawyer gave a thumbs up. You handled that perfectly. They won't be back. But Jane knew better. Her mother wasn't done. She'd just find a new, more brutal way to attack. Jane was right. The next morning, her phone buzzed her awake. It was a new phone with a new number that only a couple of people had. The text was from a blocked ID. Do you feel safe? You think he can really protect you? You are still my daughter. You will always belong to me. The phone felt like a block of ice in her hand. She showed it to Marco immediately. His face hardened. She's poking, trying to get in your head before the event. It's working, Jane admitted, hating the tremor in her voice. Marco took the phone, forwarded the text, then gave it back. Fear is her last weapon. Don't you dare give her that win. He squeezed her shoulder. Just one more day. Survive one more day and it's all over. Jane nodded, but the text message haunted her. She stayed up all night, picturing her mother's face when the video played. Would she explode, fight back, or somehow twist the whole thing to make herself look like the victim again? On the morning of the gala, Jane got up before dawn, moving like a robot. She went through her routine: water, coffee, Sarah's breathing exercises. Reese came for a final session, focusing not on fighting, but on keeping her cool. You are totally prepared for this, Reese promised her. Remember everything we worked on. Walk into that room like you own it. Don't apologize for anything. You are in control now. Jane's mind screams in a final wave of panic. Sure, she's about to fail. But Reese grounds her, saying, You've trained for this. He tells her to just breathe and reset if she stumbles. His hand on her shoulder is a rock. He says she's tougher than she knows. Go be a commander. Later, Elena arrives to finish the prep. The dress, heels, and simple jewelry were all Marco's picks. Her hair is pulled back tight, hiding nothing. The makeup is minimal. This is a mission, not a pageant. Jane looks in the mirror and a stone-cold stranger stares back, composed, deadly, and Marco is waiting right outside the door. The guy was rocking a tuxedo that cost a fortune, looking every bit the powerhouse he was. But her transformation made him stop short. He started to speak, then changed his mind. When you walk into that room, every single person will know who you are. That's the whole point, right? Yeah, but I don't think you get the sheer power you're projecting right now. He offered his arm. Ready? Jane took it, feeling his solid presence next to her. As I'll ever be. The whole circus was at the Grand Marquis Hotel, one of Chicago's most over-the-top spots. They showed up strategically late, once the place was packed. The lobby was a sea of designer clothes and smelled like money. Jane felt the entire room's attention lock onto her the second they walked in. Marco's hand stayed firm on her back, a silent signal of his backup. As they moved through the crowd, she started spotting the key players from her homework. Richard Carmichael was by the bar. Patricia Weston was working the room near the windows. And in the center of it all, mobbed by fans and press, was Charlotte Whitmore. Her mother looked flawless, as usual, perfect gown, neck dripping with diamonds, and a smile so polished it looked fake. She was mid-sentence with a reporter when she saw Jane. The smile froze on her face. For just a split second, pure shock shattered her perfect mask. Then, just as fast, it was gone, replaced by a wall of ice. Their eyes locked across the massive room. Charlotte excused herself and started moving toward them, a predator closing in on her prey. Jane's heart hammered against her ribs. Every nerve screamed at her to run. But she didn't move an inch, forcing herself to breathe, to remember the weapon she'd become in 14 days. "Jane!" Her mother's voice was sickly sweet, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Thank God, I was so terribly worried." She went in for a phony hug. Jane took one calculated step back, just out of her reach. "Don't touch me." A chill hit Charlotte's eyes, but that fake smile stayed plastered on. "Darling, we should really discuss this in private." No. The word wasn't a request, it was a command forged in steel. "We're not going anywhere, and this won't be private. Whatever you need to say it right here." A buzz went through the crowd. They could smell the drama. Phones started popping up, cameras aimed at the standoff. Charlotte's smile got brittle. "Jane, you're obviously not yourself. This man has twisted your mind. Marco saved my life. You're the one who tried to end it." Jane felt Marco's hand press on her back, a silent show of force. "I know about the insurance policy. I know you sent me to him to be killed. I know everything." For a split second, Charlotte's composure completely disintegrated, revealing the raw fury underneath. A laugh escaped her, a sound so rehearsed it was almost monstrous. "That's insane. He's been feeding you a pack of lies." "The only one who deals in lies here is you." Jane's voice grew louder with every word. "And in about 30 seconds, everyone in this room is going to see the kind of monster you really are." Charlotte opened her mouth to shoot back, but the ballroom lights cut to black. The massive screens around them burst to life, and the show began. Jane watched her mother's face as a lifetime of dirty secrets flashed across every monitor. She saw the blood drain from her cheeks, her eyes widening in pure terror as bank records and photos of Jane's childhood abuse scrolled by. Then the insurance policy itself appeared on every screen. A dead silence fell over the entire ballroom. As Jane's recorded voice began to play, her own face filling monitors, clear and steady, Charlotte finally broke. She whipped her head from one screen to the next, desperate for an escape that wasn't there. "Turn it off!" she hissed at someone. "Turn it off right now!" But no one moved. They were all captivated. The reporters, the rich donors, the board members, everyone who used to worship her and give her power. The video ended. The screens went dark. In the suffocating silence, Charlotte Whitmore stood alone in the center of the room, her carefully built world completely annihilated, and Jane, for the first time in her life, was no longer afraid. The quiet stretched on for what felt like forever. Then a glass dropped. The sound of it shattering on the floor broke the trance. Everyone started moving at once. Charlotte lunged for the closest reporter. "This is a lie, all of it. That man—" She pointed a shaking finger at Marco. "He's a monster. He made her do this." "I have copies of it all," Marco's calm voice sliced through her panic. "Financials confirmed by 3 separate forensic accountants. Medical records from 4 different hospitals." The insurance policy, filed with your signature, dated, and notarized. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket, holding it up for everyone to see. Any reporter who wants the complete file is welcome to it, on the house. A dozen hands shot up. Charlotte's face went from pale to a deep, furious red. You can't do this. I'll sue you for defamation, for slander, for showing them the truth. Jane's voice was quiet, but it carried. She stepped forward, out of Marco's shadow, standing on her own. You can try, but we both know what they'll find. Her mother's eyes met hers, and all Jane saw in them was pure desperation. Jane, please, I'm your mother. I love you. Everything I ever did was... Don't. The word was a solid brick wall. Don't you dare pretend any of it was for me. You did it for you. You have only ever done it for you. Charlotte's face twisted into something ugly. The mask was gone, burned away by rage and panic. You ungrateful little brat. After everything I gave you, you gave me nothing but scars. Jane's voice was perfectly level, the shaking long gone. And I'm done carrying them for you. A camera flashed, then another one. The press was capturing every single second of Charlotte's public execution. Jane could see the story changing right there, as every word her mother said became another nail in her coffin. Richard Carmichael shoved his way through the crowd, his face a mask of fury. Charlotte, is any of this true? Have you been stealing from the foundation? Richard, I can explain. Can you explain $2 million in offshore accounts? Patricia Weston appeared next to him, phone in hand. Because my guy just sent over the records, I'm looking at the transfers right this second. Her smile was razor sharp. It's amazing how much of our charity's money ended up in the Cayman Islands. Charlotte's mouth hung open, but no words came out. She scanned the room for a friendly face, but everyone who looked back at her wore the same expression. Shock, disgust, and betrayal. The same people who were singing her praises an hour ago were now backing away from the train wreck. This isn't over, Charlotte hissed, turning back to Jane. You think you won? You are nothing. You've always been nothing. Then she pointed a wild finger at Marco. And when he gets sick of you, when he throws you out like the trash you are, you'll have no one. No one will want you. The words were pure poison, aimed to hit every single one of her old wounds. Jane felt that old, familiar panic start to rise up inside her. The voice in her head whispered that her mother might be right, that maybe she was worthless. But then Marco's hand found hers, warm, solid, and real. And with that single touch, the panic died. Jane looked at her mother, really looked at her, and didn't see the giant from her childhood, but a small, nasty woman whose power was built on making others feel small. Without that power, without the fear she used as a weapon, Charlotte Whitmore was just pathetic. You're right about one thing, Jane said, her voice soft. I was nothing. You made sure of that. But I'm not that girl anymore. And you? Her eyes swept over the ruined woman. You're exactly what you've always been. The only difference is that now everyone else can see it too. Charlotte opened her mouth, but was cut off by a new voice from the edge of the crowd. Charlotte Whitmore. Two men in suits were making their way through the onlookers, flashing badges. Detectives? Jane recognized one of them from Marco's files, a guy who owed him a favor, placed here on standby. We have a few questions about some financial irregularities at the Children's Foundation. You need to come with us. I'm not going anywhere, Charlotte's voice rose to a shriek. This is harassment. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, the detective said calmly. I suggest you use it. It wasn't an arrest, not yet. It was just an invitation she couldn't say no to. But the oblivious guests had no idea what was really going down. They just saw the insane spectacle of Charlotte Whitmore getting escorted from her own party by cops, her entire public image completely torched. Jane watched her mom get led away, feeling a massive void open up inside her. It wasn't relief, not really. It was the empty space left by a burden she'd carried for so long she forgot it was there. Marco's hand was still holding hers. She looked up at him as he watched her, his face a total mask. You good? He asked quietly. I have no idea, she shot back with brutal honesty. Check back tomorrow. The ballroom then imploded into absolute chaos, reporters screaming, board members fighting, and guests stampeding for the exits. The music cut out. The party had officially imploded. Patricia Weston materialized from the mob, her eyes gleaming with cold-blooded opportunity. Mr. DeLuca, Ms. Whitmore. That was one hell of a presentation. It wasn't a presentation, Jane shot back. It was the truth. Even better. Patricia's grin was all teeth. The Foundation's board will need a new leader, someone with a backbone. I'm putting your name forward, Jane, if you're interested. Jane could only gawk, completely stunned. I don't know the first thing about running a charity. You know what it's like to need help and be told no. That makes you more qualified than any of these vultures. Patricia scanned the room with total disgust. Think about it. We'll talk next week. She vanished before Jane could even form a sentence. Marco steered her toward a side exit, away from the screaming horde and flashing cameras. In the quiet of a hallway, Jane finally took a real breath. Her hands were shaking, her legs felt like they were made of nothing. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation just crashed, leaving a massive void. I need to sit down, she whispered. Marco found her a bench. She put her head between her knees, trying to focus on Sarah's breathing trick. In for 4, hold, out for 4. You did the absolute right thing, Marco said, sitting down beside her. Way more than right. I feel like I'm going to be sick. That's expected. You just went toe-to-toe with the monster that's haunted your entire life. Your body is just now catching up to the shock. A shaky laugh slipped out. Is that your professional diagnosis? I've been in a few showdowns. You learn to recognize the quiet after the storm. His voice was low. Just breathe. For a long time, she just sat there with him, his solid presence an anchor while chaos erupted in the ballroom. Slowly, her hands stopped shaking. Her breathing steadied. The world stopped spinning like a top. What happens now? She asked. The police will build their case. The board will start its own deep dive into the books. The media will eat her alive for weeks. Marco's tone was pure business. The life your mother knew is over. The empire she built is about to turn to dust. And what about me? That's up to you now. He turned, looking her dead in the eye. You're free, Jane. Genuinely, your life is finally your own. The word felt alien. Freedom. A future not controlled by someone else's cruelty. She had spent so much energy just surviving. She never learned how to actually live. I don't know what I want, she confessed. Then it's time you found out. You have the time. Marco stood up, offering his hand. We need to make a tactical retreat before the press swarms this hallway. They slipped out through a service door, ducking the media circus camped out at the main entrance. Marco's car was waiting, its engine humming. Once they were inside, the car slid into traffic, leaving the night's absolute train wreck behind them. Jane watched Chicago's skyline streak past, a mess of light and shadow. This city was supposed to be her home, but it had always felt more like a cage. Now, as her mother's kingdom crumbled, she wondered what it felt like to actually belong somewhere. "Thank you," she said, her tone low, "for all of it." The words covered their entire insane situation. Marco's face was still a stone mask. "Save your thanks. The hardest part is coming." "What do you mean by that?" "Your mother will retaliate. She has lawyers, powerful friends, and hidden money. This war isn't over after one battle." He held her gaze. "Are you ready for that? For a long, brutal war?" Jane thought about it. Her mother, when cornered, was a predator, using lies, manipulation, and playing the victim to claw her way back to the top. It would be a grueling, soul-crushing fight. But the person she was 2 weeks ago didn't exist anymore. In her place was someone who knew how to stand her ground, take a hit, and stare back without flinching. She had a kind of strength neither of them knew she had. "Yes," she confirmed, "I'm ready." The car pulled up to Marco's building. They rode the elevator in silence, and he walked her to her apartment door. "Get some rest," he advised. "Tomorrow's going to be a flood of media calls, legal crap, and opportunists trying to get a piece of your new reality." A knot of dread tightened in her stomach. "I don't want to be the headline." "That's not your choice anymore. You are the story." His voice, though, was gentle. "Elena will field the calls. Focus on yourself. Call Sarah. Process what happened. Don't let them dictate your pace." "And your plans?" A tiny smile touched Marco's lips. "To make sure there are no legal weak spots, to make sure the evidence is bulletproof, to see that she answers for what she did." He paused. "And to guarantee your safety. Her desperation makes her dangerous." "Do you think she'd actually do something?" "I think she has nothing left to lose. People in that position make reckless moves." His jaw clenched. "But she won't get to you. I'll see to it." She started to argue that she could take care of herself, but then stopped. In truth, knowing he was watching her back was a comfort, a kind of trust she'd never had in anyone before. "All right," she murmured. "I'll be careful." "Good." He turned to go, then stopped. "Jane, what you did back there, confronting her, few people have that kind of courage. You have every right to be proud." He left before she could say anything. Jane went inside, locked the door, and leaned against it. She'd expected to feel triumphant, but all she felt was a deep, crushing exhaustion. It was a weariness that sank into her bones, making the simple act of changing her clothes feel like a massive chore. She managed it, swapping the gown for sleepwear and wiping off her makeup. The mirror showed her face again. Simply Jane. Not the dolled-up puppet from the gala or the broken girl from before, but a new person starting to form. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "I saw the story. I'm here for you anytime, anything." A small smile formed on her lips. She didn't have the energy to talk, but a short text of thanks felt right. Sleep seemed a million miles away, yet the second her head hit the pillow, she was gone. She was in a heavy, dreamless sleep until Elena showed up late the next morning, with coffee and the news that her phone was completely overwhelmed. "Journalists," Elena said, putting the tray on a table. "Lawyers, strangers claiming to be your relatives. I'm handling the chaos." Is there anyone I have to talk to? Only if you want. Mr. DeLuca's instructions are for you to take the day to recover. The world will be kept out. But the world wasn't about to wait. Jane had barely started her coffee when Marco walked in, his expression like solid rock. We have a complication. A cold dread settled in her gut. What sort of complication? Your mother posted bail an hour ago. She's holding a press conference this afternoon. He showed her his phone. A news headline laid out Charlotte Whitmore's new story. She was the real victim, framed by a daughter who had been manipulated by criminals in a giant conspiracy. The color washed out of Jane's face. She's going to lie. She's going to play the martyr. It's her predictable, final move. Marco took back his phone. The strategic choice is whether we counterpunch or let her destroy her own credibility. What's your advice? She's counting on you to stay silent, to retreat. She'll paint you as fragile, a pawn. His gaze was sharp. So my advice is that you show up. Be there. Be a reminder of who the actual victim is. Her heart pounded. The idea of facing a wall of cameras and accusations was horrifying, but her instinct to run was at war with the knowledge that giving up now would mean losing everything she had just won. Where is this thing being held? The Regency Hotel at noon. Marco glanced at his watch. That gives us 2 hours. Then we should get ready. This time she chose her own armor, tailored black pants and a crisp white shirt. Her hair pulled back. She looked composed, a woman with nothing to hide. When Elena's makeup artist had finished covering the last trace of a bruise, the reflection was of someone she didn't recognize at all. Marco, Ressa, and 2 bodyguards were posted up at the entrance, looking like statues ready for a hurricane. Just showing your face is the only comeback you need, he murmured as they headed for the whips. You don't have to say squat, just let them get a look at you. But staying quiet felt like waving a white flag, like co-signing the mountain of BS her mother was about to unleash. Someone had to tear that fake story down, and who better than the daughter she tried to delete? The Regency was a straight-up media war zone, flashes popping, mics in their faces, and a hurricane of questions. Marco's crew carved them a path through the madness, getting Jane inside without a single word. The press conference was in a ballroom so crammed with media, it felt like the walls were closing in. Up on a stage sat Charlotte, playing the part of the grieving mother, flanked by 2 ridiculously expensive lawyers. Some stylist had obviously been paid big bucks to make her look soft and sympathetic, the poor, wronged matriarch, and she was nailing the role. The second Jane walked in, Charlotte's whole act stuttered for a millisecond, showing a flash of pure rage before the mask snapped back on. Marco and Jane snagged seats near the back, refusing to be pushed into the shadows. Every camera lens swung their way as Jane, looking cool as a cucumber, got ready for her mother's public con job. Charlotte's top lawyer kicked things off, rattling off a pre-written list of legal denials and threatening to sue Marco DeLuca into the ground. Then Charlotte stepped to the mic. I want to start by saying how much I love my daughter, she began, her voice shaking with perfectly rehearsed emotion. For years, Jane has struggled with her mental health. I've tried everything to get her the help she needs, but she was preyed upon by someone who took advantage of her fragile state. Jane's jaw locked tight. Under the table, Marco's hand covered hers, a solid anchor in an ocean of lies. The man here today, Marco DeLuca, has a rap sheet a mile long, Charlotte announced, her voice getting stronger. He runs one of Chicago's most dangerous crews, and for his own twisted reasons, he made my daughter his target. He has poisoned her mind and is now using her as a weapon against her own family. A reporter shot a hand up. Mrs. Whitmore, what about the missing money? Completely fabricated, one of the lawyers cut in smoothly. Our own accountants are on it. We're positive these claims have zero merit. What about the life insurance policy? Yelled another journalist. For a split second, Charlotte's eyes went dead cold before the sad mom act clicked back into place. That was just smart estate planning. Twisting it into something evil just shows how low they'll stoop to ruin me. Jane had hit her limit. She got to her feet, and just like that, she owned every camera in the room. All the blood drained from Charlotte's face. Jane, honey, you don't have to. Yeah, Jane's voice sliced through the chatter. I do, because every single word you just said is a lie. The room exploded in a frenzy of flashes and shouting. The lawyers tried to get control, but they were drowned out. The stage was all Jane's now. I don't have mental health problems, Jane said, her voice rock solid. I have PTSD from 26 years of abuse from that woman. I have the paperwork for every broken bone, every bruise, every ER visit she wrote off as a kid being clumsy. Jane, please, Charlotte begged, standing up with her arms out like she was calming a hysterical toddler. Don't come near me. Don't you dare pretend you care. Jane's hands were shaking, but her voice didn't crack. You sent me to Marco DeLuca to be taken out for $2 million. That's not love. That's not protection. That's attempted murder. An attorney started walking toward her. Ms. Whitmore, you're obviously upset. Let's take a break. I'm not upset. I'm done being quiet. Jane spun around to face the press. My mother is a predator who has been stealing funds from her own charity. For decades, she's tortured me, and now she's playing the victim because she got caught. Don't fall for it. It's a hell of a show, but it's all an act. The carefully built mask on Charlotte's face finally cracked. You ungrateful, she started, catching herself and switching back to her gentle voice. Jane, that man has turned you against me, but I'm still your mother. I will always love you, no matter what he's made you believe. Marco didn't make me believe anything. You did. With every punch, every insult, every time you trained me to think I deserved to suffer. Jane's voice wavered, but she pushed through. The only thing Marco showed me was that I could heal and that I didn't have to live in fear. She then turned and walked out of the ballroom with Marco and his guys forming a human shield around her. Behind them, all hell broke loose. Jane made it to the car just as her legs gave out. She collapsed into the seat, sucking in air as the adrenaline crash hit her like a truck. Marco was right there. Breathe! You're safe! Just breathe! I couldn't let her. She just kept lying and I know. You did what you had to do. His voice was a calm anchor. You told your truth. That's what matters. Jane focused on her breathing, and slowly the world stopped spinning. When she could finally talk, she looked right at Marco. What now? A grim smile touched his lips. Now, we let the truth do its thing. The fallout was instant. Within hours, the story was a raging inferno on every Chicago news channel, with Jane's takedown on a constant loop. The Foundation's board called an emergency meeting, suspending Charlotte on the spot. 3 major donors publicly pulled their funding. The cops confirmed they were launching a formal investigation into the embezzlement. From the safety of Marco's penthouse, Jane watched the empire her mother built on lies start to implode. Sarah showed up that night for an emergency session. For 2 hours, they unpacked the trauma, the showdown, and the empty feeling that comes after the fight. It was a massive release. The next morning, Charlotte's lawyers called to talk about a settlement. "What kind of deal?" Jane asked. Marco, sitting across from her, looked completely disgusted by the idea. "The kind where she admits nothing, but gets a legal order to stay away from you forever. In return, you agree not to press criminal charges." The coffee in Jane's hands went cold. "She wants me to let her walk. She wants to stay out of prison." "Exactly." Marco's voice was dripping with contempt. "What do you think I should do?" "This is your call," he said, leaning back. "If you want her locked up, we have the evidence. But that means a trial. Months, maybe years. You'd have to testify, relive everything, face her again." Jane thought it over. The picture of a courtroom, of her mother's lawyers picking apart her trauma for a jury, the media circus, the public judgment. She had just gotten her freedom back. Did she really want to chain herself to that fight for who knows how long? "And if I take the settlement?" "She's gone. A court order keeps her away. The foundation will cut her off. Her name, career, and money will be toast. She dodges a cell, but the fake world she built gets demolished." Jane stared into her cup. Prison was one type of justice, but maybe watching her mother live in the wreckage she made was a different kind of justice all on its own. Maybe that was enough. Maybe she didn't have to set herself on fire to make sure her mother went down in flames. "I'll take the deal," she said softly, "on one condition." "Name it." "I want her to confess to everything she did. In a signed statement. A complete and total admission of guilt. The abuse, the embezzlement, the insurance scam, every single thing. And if she ever hurts anyone again, the confession goes public." Marco's smile was razor sharp. "My legal team will draw it up." Within a week, it was done. Charlotte Whitmore signed a 20-page history of her crimes. She gave up her foundation. She agreed to a permanent restraining order. She handed over her assets to pay back what she stole. In return, Jane wouldn't press charges. A weird silence fell over everything. After a lifetime of living in fear, the war was ended with ink on paper. As Jane's eyes scanned her mother's signature on the confession, a knot she'd carried forever finally loosened. The nightmare was over. In the weeks that followed, Charlotte Whitmore's life fell apart exactly as Marco said it would. The scandal became her whole story. Friends bailed. The charity world blacklisted her. Her one attempt to claim she was forced into it was shot down when Jane's lawyer threatened to release the confession. After that, Charlotte completely dropped off the map. Intel from Marco's people said her mother was living in some tiny town, a total nobody starting from scratch, the exact fate she'd always threatened Jane with. The irony was thick, but her mother was becoming a ghost. For the first time, Jane was listening to her own gut, asking herself who she really was. That question led her 3 months later to a rundown warehouse in South Chicago looking for a new start in the ruins. The building was a total wreck. We're talking busted windows, water damage everywhere, and a straight-up crime scene vibe from decades of neglect. But it was all hers. Every single square foot bought with the payout her psycho mom was forced to give up. "You really sure about this?" Marco muttered, looking at the disaster zone. "Nope," Jane said, dead serious. "But I'm doing it anyway." She'd considered the easy route, a cushy board position, endless meetings, that boring charity life. It was important work, sure, and no doubt it was crucial. In those stuffy boardrooms, vulnerable women was just a buzzword. For Jane, it was her entire backstory. She couldn't fight this battle from an office tower. She had to build something real, a place that might have actually saved her. A fortress, not some cold, fluorescent-lit prison with a million rules. This was going to be a legit refuge for women to get their lives back. An idea sparked from a chat with Sarah. While plotting her comeback, Jane called Marco's place her sanctuary. She talked about the safety, about Elena dropping off food without being asked, about Riza turning her into a killer in the gym. She remembered the therapy that finally silenced her mother's voice in her head. "Imagine if other women could have this," Jane said out of nowhere. "Not just a crappy bed and a case file, real support." Sarah just smiled. "Then you're the one who has to build it." And so there she was, staring down a ruin, picturing a revolution. Marco was already dialing. "I got a contractor, owes me big time. I'll have a crew here by morning to scope it out." "Marco, you don't have to." "I know," he cut in, his voice low. "I want to. This is a worthy cause. Let me help." Jane knew arguing was pointless. The last 3 months showed her who he really was under the mob boss reputation. Another survivor who got it, who respected the hustle, and whose word was ironclad. His loyalty was absolute, and he had a major soft spot for impossible fights. She also knew she trusted him completely, a feeling that was both terrifying and incredibly grounding. "Okay," she finally agreed. "Thank you." Marco made the call. An hour later, a rough-looking dude named Frank showed up in work boots, spitting out clipped sentences as he surveyed the site. Jane followed him, taking notes, trying to get her head around the massive job ahead. Frank listed off all the critical failures, structural, electrical, plumbing, everything was shot. "This is a monster job," Frank said. "But the bones are good, solid foundation. Could be epic if you do it right." "What's the timeline?" 6 months if you rush it, 8 to do it proper." Frank was already sketching in a beat-up notebook. "And then there's the bureaucratic nightmare of getting permits." "But it's doable." A fire lit inside Jane, a surge of hope, of purpose. "Let's do it proper." Frank just nodded, already crunching numbers in his head. "I'll have a quote for you by Friday." After he bounced, they just stood there in the dusty main hall. "You're really going through with this?" Marco said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, I am," Jane shot back, turning to face him. "I know it sounds crazy. I have zero clue what I'm doing, but I have to. If I don't..." She hunted for the words. "If I don't build something from the wreckage of what they did to me, then it was all for nothing. This way, it means something." Marco's whole expression softened. "It already means something. You survived. That's the win." "Not for me," she replied instantly. "Not anymore." She scanned the huge, empty space. "I need to build something to make the world I live in better." "Then you will," he said, like it was already a done deal. Jane wished she had that kind of certainty, figuring maybe faith was just someone else believing in you until you could believe in yourself. The next few months were a total gauntlet of paperwork, construction, and nonstop problems. Jane threw herself into the project, learning on the fly. She hired an architect who specialized in trauma-informed design, picking the brains of social workers, therapists, and other survivors. Her vision got clearer as she toured other shelters, seeing what worked and what sucked. This wasn't an institution, it was a home with 12 private havens. The plans had a huge kitchen for group meals and a therapy room next to a gym, where Risa had already offered to teach self-defense. A playroom for kids was a must-have, something Jane knew was a game changer for mothers who felt trapped. She called it Phoenix House. Elena said it was cliché, but Jane thought rising from the ashes was the perfect vibe. Marco stayed in the background, a silent enabler, a guardian who empowered her without ever trying to control her. He lined up lawyers for the nonprofit and made sure the construction crews hit their deadlines. Some nights, he'd show up just to watch the progress, his sharp questions proving he actually understood her mission. "You've changed," he said one evening, while they looked at paint swatches in the half-built kitchen. Jane glanced up. "How?" "More grounded, like you have a target now." He leaned against a counter. "When we first met, you were always braced for a hit. Now you look like you're ready to throw the first punch." "I had a good coach," Jane replied, setting the samples down. "A few, actually. Risa taught me to fight. Sarah taught me to heal. Elena showed me kindness wasn't a myth." She locked eyes with him. "And you taught me I was worth defending." A storm of emotion flashed across Marco's face. "Jane, I'm not trying to make it weird. It's just a fact." She held a blue paint chip to the wall. "You could have left me for dead that first night. You could have let her win. You didn't. Me being here right now is because of your choice." "You're here because of your choices," Marco corrected her softly. "I just gave you the room to make them." "A technicality," Jane smirked. "Either way, thanks." He went quiet, watching her with that crazy intensity before he pushed off the counter. "The blue is better than the gray," he said flatly. "It's got more warmth." And with that, the moment was over. But something had totally shifted between them, a new kind of warmth spreading through her. Sarah clocked it immediately at their next session. "You seem content," she pointed out. Jane thought about the word. Content was too boring. It was more like being on the right track, finally heading toward a future, instead of just running from the past. "I'm building something that matters," Jane explained. "And Marco, what's going on there?" Jane's face went hot. "Nothing is going on. He's just helping me." Sarah's look screamed, "Yeah, right." "Okay, and how do you feel when you're with him?" "Safe, pushed, like I can just be me, no filter." Jane thought for a second. "Is that nuts? To feel this for a guy who's, a criminal?" "Human connection is never that black and white," Sarah replied. "You're allowed to care about someone who's shown you kindness." She leaned in. "But you need to think about your future. Is a relationship part of the plan, or do you need this time for you?" "I have no idea," Jane admitted with a laugh. "I've never even seen a healthy relationship. I wouldn't know where to start. Maybe just being straight up honest with herself and with him was the way to go." But that truth felt like a cliff she wasn't ready to jump off of, since she couldn't even name what she wanted. So instead, she buried herself in Phoenix House, pouring all that chaotic energy into picking out tiles, furniture, and staff. She built her crew carefully. Lisa, a manager who'd escaped her own abusive husband and got what these women needed. 2 trauma counselors. And a security expert, Risa's idea, who built a system that felt safe, not like a prison. Every move was calculated. 6 months into the build, Patricia Weston showed up uninvited. Her judgmental eyes scanned everything, her sharp questions ending with little, curt nods. "This is quality work," Patricia finally admitted. "You need to pitch this to the foundation's board. We have emergency funds for stuff like this. It could cover your first 2 years." Jane was floored. "You'd actually consider it?" "With a killer proposal, yeah. The foundation needs to fix its rep after your mother's scandal. Backing her daughter's project. The same daughter who took her down and makes us look like the good guys. Patricia's smile was all business. Besides, the project is actually solid. That part was a win. With the board meeting in 3 weeks, Jane went into overdrive, building a presentation that broke down the mission, budget, and impact of Phoenix House. Marco became her sparring partner, playing devil's advocate and hitting her with the same brutal questions the board would. "What makes you different from other shelters?" he shot at her. "We offer more than a bed. We offer a total life rebuild. Therapy, career coaching, legal help, childcare. Everything a woman needs to actually start over, not just get by." Jane clicked to the next slide. "The current system is broken. We're a smaller, more intense model built for a bigger impact." Marco just gave her the green light. "Better, more punch. Now, what's the end game?" They drilled her relentlessly until the whole spiel was pure muscle memory. So come meeting day, she was locked and loaded. And get this, the pitch didn't just land, it blew the roof off. The suits threw everything they had at her, but you could tell they were seriously hooked. Patricia jumped in at all the right moments, giving Jane's plans that extra shot of authority. The final vote, a total landslide. The foundation was in for 2 years, with a renewal option if the numbers looked good. Walking out of that room, Jane felt a massive weight lift. She hit up Marco immediately. "We locked it down. We're fully funded." His voice came back, just full of pride. "Never had a doubt. You were a total killer in there." I was about to have a heart attack. "Hey, fear and skill go hand in hand." She could practically hear him smiling through the phone. "Congrats, Jane. You earned every bit of this." After hanging up, Jane just sat in her car for a minute, letting it all sink in. A year ago, she was a ghost, a woman so broken she'd basically checked out of life. Now, she was running a whole nonprofit, about to open a safe house that would pull countless women out of the same hell she escaped. The glow-up felt so insane it was like watching somebody else's movie. But it was hers. She built this whole thing from nothing but pain, pure will, and a flicker of hope her mother never managed to snuff out. Phoenix House officially opened for business on a crisp November morning. Jane was standing in the main common room, the walls a deep, calming blue, furniture set up to make people talk, and sunlight pouring through brand new reinforced windows, when this massive wave of emotion just hit her. It was perfect, not in some cold, institutional way, but like a real home, a place where you could actually heal. Elena had dropped in the final touches, bringing the rooms to life with plants and art. Risa already had a heavy bag hung in the gym, ready to go for the self-defense classes she was going to teach. Sarah had kitted out the therapy room with comfy chairs and soft lighting. Every single person who helped Jane get her own life back had pitched in to build this place for others. And Marco, he rolled up that morning with coffee and pastries for the crew, dodging any and all praise for the huge part he played. "This is all you," he told her when she tried to thank him. "Just let yourself feel it." The very first resident, a 23-year-old named Maria, showed up that afternoon with a fresh bruise on her face and a little girl glued to her leg. Lisa welcomed them, showed them to their room, and gently went over the house rules. Jane watched from a distance, remembering that freaky, disorienting feeling of stepping into a safe place for the first time. How weird and suspicious it all felt. Maria's daughter, 4-year-old Sophia, spotted the playroom and let out a little gasp. Mama, look, toys. You can play, sweetie, Maria whispered back. You're safe now. Jane had to look away before she started bawling. She found Marco in the kitchen, just leaning against the counter with his coffee, giving her space to pull it together. Our first family is here, Jane said, her voice all thick with emotion. I saw, he said, his voice soft. How are you holding up? I don't know. This feels huge. What if I can't really help her? What if I'm a total fraud? Then you'll figure it out, just like you've figured out everything else. Marco set his mug down on the counter. Jane, you built this. You literally spun something real and beautiful out of your own personal nightmare. That takes a kind of guts most people just don't have. It's time you started owning it. It's not that easy. For 26 years, my mother hammered it into my head that I was worthless. Your mother was wrong about everything, especially about you. He crossed his arms. Just look around. This place exists because you willed it to. That's not worthless. That's power. Jane looked him right in the eye, really saw him, and felt something inside her just click into place. This guy, who swooped in to save her, who helped her dismantle her mother's toxic legacy, who was her rock through a brutal rebirth and never asked for anything in return. For months, this unspoken thing had been growing between them, a truth she refused to even look at, writing it off as too messy, too intense for a life still scarred by her mother's abuse. But maybe Sarah's advice was pointing her toward the truth. Toward being honest. Marco, The words just died in her throat, her nerve completely gone. He just waited, a perfect picture of unshakable patience. Thank you, she finally squeaked out. For everything, for seeing something in me when I saw nothing. For a split second, a shadow that looked a lot like disappointment crossed his face before he just gave a nod. Always. And just like that, the moment was gone. Jane went back to work, a whirlwind of greetings and tasks. But the weight of what she didn't say followed her for the rest of the day. Phoenix House filled up almost overnight. Women showed up like refugees from their own lives, all wounded and haunted, wearing their trauma like a heavy, invisible cloak. Jane watched them slowly start to unwind, to accept that they were in a sanctuary, to believe they actually deserved better. In every single one of them, she saw a piece of her old self. The nervous twitch, the constant apologizing, the way they'd try to shrink themselves like they were trespassing on air. And she saw them heal as therapy, friendship, and safety worked their slow, powerful magic. Jane watched broken women get back on their feet, their voices getting stronger, their backs straighter, their spirits remembering how to fight. It was exhausting and incredible, exactly how she'd pictured it. 3 months in, while she was grinding late on a grant proposal, Marco suddenly appeared in her office doorway. You're still here, he pointed out. So are you, Jane shot back, capping her pen. What's up? Marco came in, closing the door quietly. The deadly serious look on his face sent a bolt of pure panic right through her. There's something I have to tell you, he started. Jane braced herself. Okay, I'm out, he said, the words so simple, but they hit her like a bomb in the quiet room. The whole thing, the family business, I'm done. Jane could only gape at him, completely floored. What? Why? Because I'm done with that life. I'm sick of the violence, the paranoia, the constant waiting for the next knife in the back. He collapsed into the chair across from her. The idea's been growing for a while now, since the night we first met, actually. Watching you rebuild a life from the wreckage of your old one made me realize I could do the same, that there was another way. What are you going to do? Legit stuff. I've got investments, properties. There's enough clean money for a fresh start. His eyes locked onto hers and stayed there. And I want to be a part of this at Phoenix House. Not with money. You don't need that from me anymore. But with security, legal advice, with all the behind-the-scenes stuff that keeps a place like this standing. Jane's heart was about to pound out of her chest. You want to work with me? I want to work with you, for you, in any way that helps the mission. He leaned forward. Jane, for 20 years, I built an empire I don't even want anymore. Watching you create something that matters showed me how totally empty my own world was. I need something real to hold on to, and I need to be near you while I'm doing it. His confession just hung there in the air between them. Marco, Jane's voice was barely a whisper. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm telling you that I care about you. I have for months. Helping you has been the most meaningful thing I've done in years. If you feel even a tiny bit of what I feel, then I have to see what this could be. He paused. But you have to know, I'm not that man anymore. I'm choosing a different life. For myself, yes, but also for you. Jane got up, walked around her desk, and did the one thing she'd been dying to do for months. She kissed him. It was soft at first, like she was asking a question. But when Marco's arms wrapped around her, it got a loud and clear answer. It felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, she was out of breath. I've wanted to do that forever, she admitted. Marco's smile was real and warm, a million miles away from the ice-cold mask he wore when they first met. You should have. I was terrified. I didn't want to screw this up. I was scared of what would happen if I lost you. You're not going to lose me. He cupped her face in his hands. I'm here, Jane. Whatever this becomes, wherever it goes, I'm 100% in. She knew he was telling the truth. She knew it wasn't just talk, but because of everything she'd seen over the past year. Marco DeLuca was a man of his word. And if he said he was choosing her, choosing this new start, he meant it with every fiber of his being. Okay, she breathed. Then we figured this out together. The next 6 months were a crash course in reinvention. Marco started the messy business of getting out of his organization, handing over power to his second in command, and making his exit final. It wasn't a clean break. Some guys thought it was a trick, a setup, and tried to drag him back in, but his will was made of steel, and eventually they backed off. He bought a condo near Phoenix House. He started showing up for dinner, talking with the residents, becoming a strong, quiet male figure who wasn't tied to violence. Get this. The guy walked on eggshells, so careful it was crazy. And what do you know? The women actually started to trust this ex-enforcer. Risa was losing her mind over it, saying, I never in my life thought I'd see Marco DeLuca slinging spaghetti for survivors. Marco, stirring sauce like a pro, just deadpans. It's a strange world. Jane's watching him in this bizarre new habitat, miles from the chaos he left, and gets this insane calm. Yeah, this was the play. They were building a partnership from scratch, one not based on intimidation. He taught her security. She taught him that having a soft spot wasn't a death sentence. So yeah, they threw down over money, her insane work hours, and him acting like her personal bodyguard 24/7. But here's the twist. They learned to fight clean, admit when they were wrong, and stick together through the drama. Sarah just nods. You're both actually trying. That's what matters. Elena was way blunter. It's about damn time. I called this from day one. Riza just decks Marco in the arm, promising to bust his kneecaps if he ever hurts Jane. And my guy promises she'll get the first shot if he screws up. Fast forward 1 year, and Jane's on a stage, celebrating year 1 of her new empire. The joint is packed with her success stories, graduates, newbies, the whole crew. Marco is posted up against the back wall, arms crossed, looking proud as hell. When I started this, Jane says, her voice rock solid, I wanted to build the fortress that should have existed to save me, a place for women to be more than their trauma, where they could seize back their stories, their safety, and their own second chance. Her eyes scan the crowd, locking onto her soldiers. Maria, who showed up beaten down, is now crushing nursing school. Keisha, who was dead silent for a week, now runs the support groups. And Amara, who walked in with 3 kids and 0 options, is now rocking a full-time job and saving for her own place. You all taught me. Healing isn't a straight line. It's chaos, it's brutal, and sometimes it feels like a lost cause. But it is always worth the fight. Every single time. Jane's voice finally cracks. Thanks for believing in me. Thanks for having the guts to choose yourselves. And thanks for showing everyone that just surviving can become something legendary. The applause hits like a shock wave. Women are on their feet, cheering, crying victory tears. When it finally quiets down, she finds Marco in the garden out back. He's on a bench, taking in the last bit of daylight. That was next level, he says as she sits down. We made something real here. This place wouldn't be here without you. Nah, I'm sure you'd have found a way. But his smile is 100% genuine. They sit in comfortable silence, watching the city start to light up. I've been thinking, Marco says finally. About what? About the next move. For us? He turns to face her, all in. I love you, Jane. I think I have since you took my hand in my office, ready for a war. I want to build a life with you, a real one. Not yet. I know we're still figuring this out. He links his fingers with hers. But you need to know my endgame. My future has you in it, permanently. Jane just stares at this man, the one who rescued her, who backed her play as she rebuilt her life, who literally rewrote his own code for her. She thinks back to the girl she was a year ago, broken, silent, and totally convinced she was worthless. That girl could never have pictured this. A life built on a mission, not misery, surrounded by a loyal crew and a man who loves her. Not despite her scars, but for the wars she had to win to get them. She whispers back, I love you too. I want that future. And just like that, her comeback story is locked in. Marco's kiss is the silent contract on everything they're about to build. Looking back at Phoenix House, she sees light blasting from its windows. A straight-up beacon. In there, women were learning their value was untouchable. The original plot to make her a ghost? It backfired and forged something immune to hate. Jane was a survivor who chose to level up, turning her pain into a permanent fortress that would shield countless others. Every woman sheltered there became living proof of the hardcore rule Jane discovered. Survival isn't the endgame. It's just the starting line. The real win is the choice, made every day to actually live. And so Jane Whitmore, no longer a shadow, no longer silent or afraid, became unstoppable and finally completely alive.
Lesson: control is not love, and trauma can imitate loyalty until healing teaches the difference. He would present the case coldly, almost clinically. Charlotte demonstrates textbook coercive control, physical violence, economic restriction, isolation, identity erosion, and narrative manipulation. She does not raise a daughter. She manufactures dependency. Her form of attachment is possessive, not maternal. This distinction matters because abusive figures often demand to be interpreted through the language of love while operating through the mechanisms of domination. Jane's response is equally psychologically coherent. She does not escape sooner because trauma rarely behaves like logic. A person conditioned under chronic abuse learns adaptation strategies that can look passive from the outside but are in fact survival intelligence. Hypervigilance, self-erasure, compliance, emotional freezing. These are not signs of weakness. They are expensive ways of staying alive. Her connection to Marco is also instructive. In another story, he might be read as merely a rescuer. Psychologically, his function is more specific. He disrupts the abusive schema. He offers structure without humiliation, protection without ownership, and challenge without degradation. That combination is rare enough that it can feel disorienting to a traumatized person. Safety often feels suspicious before it feels safe. The life lesson here is essential. Many people raised inside manipulation confuse intensity with care. They believe love must hurt, cost, or shrink them because that is the template embedded in their nervous system. Recovery begins when the mind learns a new pattern. One can be seen and not exploited, corrected and not crushed, needed and not consumed. Thus, the case resolves not when the abuser suffers public disgrace, though that has legal and symbolic value. It resolves when the victim's internal world is reorganized. Jane stops hearing her mother as the final authority on her worth. Once that happens, Charlotte loses her most powerful weapon. Public influence can be fought in court. Internalized contempt is harder. Jane survives because she defeats both.